things that go away.
I know that week first bill was used to this.
So that whole week.
Okay.
I don't have to look at the schedule. I know I'm going to be asleep at the end. I may be here as soon as the 4th.
It's like this math.
There's 26, there's 321.
7,000.
Right? University Parkway. From this way, right? That's it.
No, exactly.
Sure, we get this somewhere.
Dean, good. I'm Al Spritzer. Thank you for
Found your set your back. Oh, okay. You're good there. Got it.
Hi, my name is Karen.
They call this.
Oh.
Yeah, Jeff Creek's right there.
Yeah, she's back there.
White lights in Asheville too. Clemmer College of Education.
Thank you very much.
Governor. Al Spritzer, College of Education.
And next?
Good to see you.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you for doing this. Well, I remember a year or so ago, I said, Jim.
That's Cap Creek Road. Okay, well, let's just assume that's it. That's the 2.7. Yeah, no, I won. Okay.
I knew at the end.
You know the history.
I told him I couldn't do it. Oh, I understand.
Good to see you, Nick. How's it going? How you been?
So I told him
Oh, I'm glad to see you, Nate. Never met you,
We are.
Oh,
yeah. Nice.
Got a couple of
We are on it. Miss Powell, did you see AJ in there? In the cafeteria? AJ was in there. He,
Yeah,
Good to see you.
Stan, good to see you.
Yeah, Dr. Sandra.
I'm Al Spritzer. How are you doing? Good to see you. Real good. Happy that you're retired.
That's good. That mean I get to cheat off Pal's notebook. Cheat off every page. That mean I get to cheat off his paper sitting next to you. This, like I said early this morning, this is.
Okay? I talked to Bill last night. He said you left him at home.
I know. It's like, wait a minute, since when did you just...
And I take him to a pub.
Thank you, he would have enjoyed that.
Good day, huh?
There's over 2 minutes. Every single one.
Okay. Ready for lunch. Good luck.
Let's get, so you know.
Been building this moment.
You all are with the student trustees. I'm looking, the governor's here, I'm gonna move away, because I'm unlikely to have another student. I remember your age. I'll pound it. I got the honorary
Yes, ma'am.
Is this not wonderful?
Hi, I'm
We're
Linda
not gonna get
Lattimore.
up, we want you to meet this
I'm
lady.
Kristen Swain. Questions? Yes. For some reason, it keeps turning out that I'm. I keep asking. But instead, if you could just have him say, I gave him yes, and I have. You just
Well, and congratulate you and be more every time.
show them what it's right to me, and you
Hey,
need
give us
anything,
all
let
a
me
good
know.
report today.
I'll be here
Don't Cindy can get online and watch us.
then. She said no thank you.
She says she's out her fingernails. That's what
I've had plenty of time.
She didn't seem too excited about that.
I guess we.
She did question the session last
Donna thinks so.
Watch. That should be good.
So when I'm doing something in national testimony, she. I
I
don't think I was in my former role. She gives me a hard time. She says, "You look too serious." She'll occasionally send me a text message.
I just always say, you need
Say this right here, I appreciate that, sir.
All right.
Let me open up.
It's
I'll lean on
look
you.
at this. So
How you doing?
I've got your script. Scott, you got that script.
Got my screen.
I'll move us through, call the leader, make some brief comments, and return to the governor. And then after we hit 5, we will see you. But only time I get to pound the gavel, I'm going to pound the gavel.
Well, thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my distinct honor and privilege to welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Board of Trustees here at East Tennessee State University. It's also my distinct privilege to call this meeting to order. I joked some with Mr. Nicewarmer that this is the only time in the capacity as president in which I will call the meeting to order. From this point forward, the meeting will call to order by the chair, and we'll move through the selection of the chair and the vice chair later in the meeting. I'd like to take a moment to say thanks to a couple of individuals. First, I would like to thank Mike Krause and the staff at THEC for the wonderful job that they did this morning in the orientation session for the board. An opportunity for the board to learn of the public policy issues facing the state, to learn about the Drive to 55 initiative, but also to have a conversation around good governance and what it means to serve on a public board of trustees. Mike, thanks to you and your staff for setting the agenda and moving us, I think, from a point that will allow us to be part of your efforts and the governor's efforts to achieve the goals of the Drive to 55. It is my distinct honor to welcome the governor of the great state of Tennessee, Governor Bill Haslam, here for the first meeting of the Board of Trustees. The state of Tennessee is fortunate in that we have the nation's education governor here with us today. I have the honor to travel across the country and speak with individuals who ask questions about the policy initiatives that are underway in Tennessee. We are the state that everyone across the country is looking to. From Drive to 55 to Tennessee Reconnect to the Tennessee Promise to sales to the efforts to put high school counselors in a college coaching role in high schools across the state to the outcomes formula. From top to bottom, we are the state that individuals across the country are looking to. We are the state that foundations such as Lumina and Gates are looking to, and they're looking to us because of the leadership, the vision, and the dedication of our governor, Governor Bill Haslam. Governor, I'd like to turn to you for any comments you'd like to make on this historic day.
Well, thanks, Dr. Nolan. I appreciate the compliments. I have a lot of help in doing that from folks at THEC and others. The man on your left prior to deserting me was a big part of a lot of those things as well. But I want to say 2 or 3 things. First of all, this really is a historic day. I mean, this is something we have, as a state, have talked about and thought about for a long time. And this is actually the 3rd of these first board meetings that I have been to out of the former TBR universities. And I've walked away from both of the other 2, and I'm confident I will today, saying this is an idea that really is a game changer. And I don't say that because we were part of it. I say it because you have a group of men and women here who, as you can see, are highly accomplished people. These folks weren't begging me to be on the board. I was begging them to be on the board because they all have full lives. But they all are committed to this idea that ETSU can be a great university, or let me say, even better university than it is now. And they are going to be completely focused on that, and they're going to be looking at everything from the students' perspective to faculty perspective to alumni, and they're going to, in each one of these meetings, think about, again, how do we keep moving the university forward. So I am confident that 3 or 4 years from now, this entire region will look around and say, wow, we thought ETSU was a critical player before. It's even more so now. So thank you all for doing that. I really appreciate you serving. I think it's a really big deal. The idea, like I said, is that you all would focus on making this a great university, and I want you to do that. I also need to remind you, as the governor of the entire state, that you're still part of the higher education system in Tennessee. There will be times when there are things that you want to do that you think make every sense in the world for ETSU, but again, we're still part. While you have your own board, you're still part of the bigger network of things. And Tennessee Higher Education Commission and others, legislature and others, are still a player in this game with you. So I just want to remind you of that. And that's a good thing, by the way. It's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. So I'm excited about this meeting. Like I said, both of the last 2 meetings I went to, the presidents at the end of the meeting said, you know, we had more fruitful, productive discussion about our university at this first board meeting than we've had in a long time under the former setup, because you're going to be discussing everything from academic policy to tuition, and these people will be engaged. So, Dr. Nolan, congratulations, thank you, and to the entire board, again, thank you for being willing to serve.
Governor, on behalf of the faculty and staff and student body of the institution, I want to thank you for your commitment to making this change possible. You referenced the comment from the prior 2 presidents about the conversations that occurred in those settings around the future of their institutions. We saw this morning in the training and professional development session with THEC, really a focused conversation about the past, the present, and the future of the institution. And I look forward to the things that will come from the conversations with the individuals around this table. I want to paint our meeting this morning within a sense of history. We are an institution that was founded in 1911 for a singular purpose, and that is to improve the quality of life for the people of Central Appalachia. From our very humble roots as a normal school, we have evolved into a complex modern institution. But on this historic day, I want to provide a little bit of a lens of history of those who have come before us. I mentioned our founding in 1911. In 1912, the first 4 graduates of the institution walked across what was then a stage and received their degrees. As a frame of reference, this past spring, we awarded more than 3,000 degrees in an academic year. We've moved through multiple names. We have been East Tennessee State Normal School. We've been East Tennessee State Teachers College. Then we were State Teachers College in Johnson City. And then finally, in the 1950s, after we awarded our first master's degrees, we became East Tennessee State University. We're an institution that has been on the forefront of cultural and social change. We were one of the first institutions in the state to integrate and to do so without incident. And in 1956, Eugene Carruthers became the first African-American student to enroll at this institution pursuing a master's degree in administration. We were one of the first institutions in the state to move forward with a complex ROTC program, which began for us in 1952. 1972 was a major governance change for the university. Prior to 1972, those name changes, those milestone events, all occurred under the umbrella of the Department of Education. In 1972, with the formation of the Board of Regents, you saw the first centralized governance lens for post-secondary education in the state. And from that point forward, there was massive development at the institution. You saw the conversations around the formation of the Quillen College of Medicine, a College of Medicine that enrolled its inaugural class of 24 students in 1978. They crossed the stage in 1982. Since then, more than 1,800 students have graduated from Quillen, more than half of whom are practicing within the state of Tennessee. A College of Medicine centered also on that mission of service to the people of our region, and we are annually ranked in the top 10 nationally for the number of our physicians who move into rural and family practice. I'm going to come back to that mission time and time again in my introductory comments. We are an institution that, under the leadership of the Board of Regents, saw the proliferation of master's degree programs, of doctoral degree programs, the establishment of the research infrastructure at the university, a real focus on outreach and service through the receipt of a Kellogg grant in the mid-1980s. In the early 2000s was another period of evolution for the institution in 2005 with the launch of two new colleges, our Honors College and the College of Pharmacy. And the story of the College of Pharmacy really is a story of the perseverance and willpower of the people of Northeast Tennessee. All of you in the room are familiar with the history of the College of Pharmacy. It is the only College of Pharmacy in the state of Tennessee that exists as a private college on a public campus, and in fact may be the only public institution in the nation with a private College of Pharmacy on a public campus. But the willpower of this region to focus on academic programs that met the needs of the people of this region, a consistent theme since our founding in 1911 as a normal school. Today is the next chapter in that life cycle of the university. When we were in meeting room 6 with the staff at THEC going through a conversation about good governance, I drew your attention by design to a picture on the wall, a picture of the first faculty at the institution with President Sidney Gilbert in the center. Those faculty moved through a path of exploration. Those faculty moved through a path of design and development. They were the first faculty to design curricula, the first faculty to work through questions related to tuition and fees, the first group of faculty and administrators at the institution to talk about capital projects and design. Earlier this morning, we had an opportunity with you as a board to gather for a similar moment, a picture in time that I'm confident decades from now, individuals will look back to and learn from the lessons that are moving forward from this board. What we're going to do today is to adopt bylaws, conflict of interest statements, but in essence, what we're doing is getting organized. From this point forward, the real work of the board will begin. So it's with that I draw my comments to a close, and Dr. Linville will turn to you for a roll call.
Dr. Alsop.
Present.
Ms. Ayers.
Present.
Mr. DiCarlo.
Present.
Mr. Golden.
Present.
Ms. Grisham.
Present.
Dr. Latimer.
Present.
Mr. Niswonger.
Present.
Mr. Powell.
Present.
Mr. Ramsey.
Present.
Dr. Nolan, all are in attendance. Dr. Linville, thank you. Members of the board, the first matter of business before you is found under tab 1 of your agenda materials. The agenda materials were provided to each member of the board 2 weeks ago in paper form. They were posted to the web yesterday so that individuals who are following the activities of the board, either here within the East Tennessee room or virtually, can move through those agenda materials with us. As outlined in tab 1 of the agenda materials are the incorporating bylaws for the board. These are bylaws that were developed through an internal shared governance committee led by Dr. Linville, bylaws that incorporate best practices from the Association of Governing Boards, but they are bylaws that outline the operations for the Board of Trustees. As you note within the bylaws, many of the elements contained therein are derived from specific sections of the Focus Act. So the Focus Act prescribes a committee structure. The Focus Act prescribes for the presence of standing committees. It also talks about the need for regular and public meetings of the board. So elements of the bylaws were developed from the requirements of the Focus Act. Other elements of the bylaws were derived from, as I referenced, best practices from the AGB.
Bylaws are structured within a series of articles, Articles 1 through Article 6. Article 1 outlines the authority and responsibility of the Board of Trustees, including the responsibility for the academic and fiduciary integrity of the board. Article 2 outlines the processes through which the operations of the board will transpire, including but not limited to public meetings, sunshine laws, quorums, agenda structures, etc. As detailed in the agenda materials, Article 3 details the committee structure of the Board of Trustees, the roles, responsibilities, and other issues pertaining to the operations of those committees. The proposed committees for the board include an executive committee, an academic and student affairs committee, a finance and administration committee, and then finally the audit committee. A point of note, the audit committee and our internal auditor will report directly to the board. And within some of the materials that are contained within best practice, we are following best practices as it relates to internal audit. Article 4 outlines the process for selection, appointment, and evaluations of the university president. Number 5 prescribes the general parliamentary procedures that will define our business and operations. And then Article 6 outlines the processes through which the bylaws will become effective and any affiliated amendments, the procedures through which they will be effectuated. That's a brief overview of the bylaws. I did not go into each individual section because you've had the materials in advance. I would like to note that within this folder, so if you open this folder, you'll see a document on the left-hand side in which there's some text in red. As I talked to members of the board in advance of the meeting, we did receive feedback from the board related to suggested changes and amendments to the bylaws. I really want to take a moment to thank David Golden for his leadership and counsel. Many of the changes that we're proposing today, not only to the bylaws, but to many of the policies that are contained in a future agenda item, are a result of David's wise counsel and feedback. So thank you for the suggestions. So I would bring forward before the board first the opportunity for any questions that you have about the bylaws or the proposed amendment. There is one additional suggestion that Mr. Golden has made, but we'll get to that in a second, but I want to pause to see if there are any questions related to the bylaws.
Mr. President, I'd move that we adopt, the trustees adopt the bylaws as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
I would like to propose an amendment to the motion as slated. If you would look to the bylaws, we're going to go to section 5, which are the responsibilities for the board secretary. So it's section 5. We're going to move to page 7 of your agenda materials. So within page 7 of your agenda materials, under section 5, there are the roles and responsibilities of the board secretary. One of the questions that emerged in conversation with the board relates to item E. Item E notes that the secretary shall notify the members of all special committees created by the board of their appointment. The proposed amendment to item E clarifies the process through which you as board members are informed when special committees are created, not only why they're created, the purpose for, but also the membership. So the proposed amendment would be notify the members of all special committees appointed by the board of their appointment, as well as all other board members. In essence, what that clarifying language does is it compels the secretary to inform all of you when a special committee has been formed and the reasons for the said formation of the special committee. We felt that that was inherent within E as written, but the clarifying language, I think, puts us on more solid ground moving forward. So if we could have a motion to amend Mr. Neiswanger's amendment, Mr. Neiswanger's original motion. So we have a motion and a proper second. Any questions related to the bylaws as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Likewise opposed, nay.
Aye.
The ayes appear to have it. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of a code of ethics and conflict of interest policy. Once again, the materials pertaining to this item were provided to the board in advance. They are found behind tab 2 of your agenda materials. As noted within the agenda materials, both the Focus Act as well as the accrediting standards of SACS, our regional accrediting body, require that we as a board have clear and consistent code of conduct and conflict of interest policies. The policies are very straightforward, and in fact, within the purposes of the meeting today, before departing, you will be provided with a sheet that we would like for you to review and sign, declaring that you do not have a personal or business conflict with respect to the operations of the board. So the Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest materials are found on pages 22, 23, and 24 of the agenda materials. Any questions related to the Code of Conduct and Conflict of Interest policies as presented? Do we have a motion to adopt the Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second from Dr. Alsup. Any questions on the agenda item or anything related to Conflict of Interest Code of Conduct? We have a proper motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion as presented in the materials signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is the election of a chair and vice chair. It is at this point, after we move through here, that I will pass the gavel to the chair. But just for the purposes of it's the only time I'm going to get to do this, I'm just going to tap it lightly. I'll never get to do that again. I've had the opportunity to meet with many members of the board to discuss the leadership of the board, the opportunity for an individual to serve as chair and vice chair. And it would be, I think, my distinct honor to have the chance to serve with these two individuals. In conversation with the board, two names have emerged, and they are names that have emerged literally without any prompt. So if I've had the opportunity to speak to Governor Ramsey or to Mr. Golden or to Dorothy Grisham and ask the question, well, who do you think should be the chair and vice chair of the board? Without hesitation, it's, well, I feel that Mr. Neiswanger should serve as chair and that David Golden should serve as vice chair. That was one of the more interesting points of angst that I had asking the question, but I was very pleased to know that there was unanimity around the table when that question was posed. So I would like to present to the board the slate of officers of chair and vice chair, of Mr. Scott Neiswanger as chair of the board and Mr. David Golden as vice chair of the board, and would open the floor to questions, comment, or conversation. So I'm not in a position as president to make a motion, but I would offer that slate of officers.
I would like to move that we adopt the slate of officers by acclamation.
We have proper motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Well, it's yours, test it. I'd like to take just a moment of personal privilege to let you know how I ended up here. 2 or 3 years ago, Governor and I were talking about many aspects of K through 12 and higher education. And we both arrived at how important it would be to have each state four-year school have its own board of governance. There's a lesson in this. You might say, and I don't really mean this, but no good deed goes unpunished. So he calls me and said, that legislation passed. Now, how would you like to serve on that board? So if you're talking to our educational governor about good issues and you have a good idea, you too could end up with it. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. We are so unique at ETSU to have a school of this size with a world-renowned medical school and a pharmacy school, a budding engineering program, and all of the other majors that we have here. I have always been, in the 45 years I've been in East Tennessee, very proud of East Tennessee State, and it has come light years in its growth over this point in time, at this point in time. And by having your own governance for your institution, our role is really simply to help develop and be of help with the strategic plan, helping the leadership team and Dr. Nolan be as successful as they can possibly be. And you see a lot of different experiences in business and education and other things around this table. And collectively, I think this is going to be a wonderful board and great support in really moving us deep into the 21st century at ETSU. It's with a great deal of pride that I sit here in front of you all today. And thank you for allowing me to be your chair. With that, we'll move to the selection of the student trustee.
I will present the agenda.
Chairman Niswonger, members of the board, it's my distinct pleasure to present to you my recommendation for the inaugural student trustee who will serve on the Board of Trustees at East Tennessee State University. The resumes for 3 individuals were shared with you in advance of the meeting, but I'd like to provide a little bit of context around that selection process, because as with anything at an institution, there's a significant amount of shared governance process that went into the development of the recommendation. Our Student Government Association solicited nominations as well as applications from across the student body for individuals who would serve in this role of trustee. The SGA then interviewed those individuals and winnowed that list and applicant pool down to 3 individuals. Those 3 individuals were then submitted to me. I took those 3 individuals and turned to our Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Joe Sherlin. Dr. Joe Sherlin and staff interviewed each of the 3 candidates, and based upon those interviews, made the recommendation to me that I'm conveying to you that Mr. Nathan Farner serve as the inaugural student representative on the Board of Trustees. Nathan is a graduate of Unicoi County High School. He is a leader on this campus. There is not a major initiative that has been launched in this academic year from the SGA that he was not a part of. He was active in the civility celebrations that are occurring throughout the month. He is a Roan Scholar, and for those of you who know anything about this institution, that is the most prestigious scholarship that we have at East Tennessee State University. I had the honor to serve on the committee that interviewed Nathan, and he was a star the moment he walked in the room that day, and he has been a star ever since. So, Mr. Chair, the recommendation to you on behalf of staff is that Nathan Farner serve as the student representative to the Board of Trustees.
Do I have a motion to accept Nathan?
Make a motion to accept Nathan as our student member of our board.
Second? A second. Okay. Further discussion? Is he a good guy? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Welcome, Nathan. At this time, I'll ask Dr. Linville to distribute copies of the committee slate and officers. And I'll have no other way to do this but simply read to you what that means. As outlined in our bylaws, the board will be comprised of 4 standing committees: the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Audit Committee, Finance and Administration Committee, and Executive Committee. In summary, the function of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee is to assist the Board of Trustees in matters related to academic planning and programming, student life, and athletics. The Finance and Administration Committee will coordinate the finance, business, and administration of the university's budget, including the investment of university funds. In matters ranging from tuition and fees to capital outlay budgets, the Finance Committee will work with the staff to ensure that the board meets its fiduciary responsibilities. The executive committee is composed of the board chair, the vice chair, and the chair of the academic and student affairs committee. The executive committee will work directly with President Nolan, providing advice and counsel as needed between meetings of the board. Lastly, the audit committee serves to assist the board in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities for the integrity of the university's financial reporting process and systems of internal controls regarding finance, accounting, and legal compliance. As noted in your agenda materials, the committee will oversee and direct the internal audit function and external auditors whom the committee may employ. As outlined in the materials distributed by the staff, the proposed membership of the standing committees of the Board of Trustees is Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Linda Lattimore, Chair, Janet Ayers, Fred Alsop, and our student representative, David Golden.
Go back to
That
school.
takes you back. Finance Committee, Steve DiCarlo, Chair, Dorothy Grisham, Ron Ramsey, Jim Powell. Audit Committee, Dorothy Grisham, Steve DiCarlo, and Ron Ramsey. As called for in the bylaws, I certify that the members of the financial background and expertise required to serve on the audit committee. Executive committee outlined by the bylaws. The members of that committee are Scott Niswonger, David Golden, and Linda Lattimore. Do I have a motion for acceptance of the standing committees?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just as a point of clarification, the committee distribution that was provided to each of the members would be the committees that we're taking action on here today. So you would have, just want to make sure I have this clear for the purpose of minutes, within the sheets that were distributed, Linda Latimer as chair of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Steve DiCarlo as chair of Finance, David Golden as chair of Audit. Within Academic and Student Affairs, the membership would be Trustees Latimer, Ayers, Alsop, and Golden. Within Finance, Trustees DiCarlo, Grisham, Ramsey, Powell, and Farner. Within Audit, Trustees Golden, Grisham, and Ramsey. And then the Executive Committee, Trustees Niswonger, Golden, and Latimer.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for clarification. Any further question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move to item 8 on the agenda, the adoption of the calendar for the Board of Trustee meetings. For your information, the materials are referenced in tab 4. Staff proposes that the board meet on a quarterly basis, with meetings starting at 9:30 in the morning. I'd envision that we'd have those committee meetings just prior to lunch, a brief lunch break, and then reconvene the formal meeting of the board at 1 o'clock on the below referenced dates. Do I have a motion for adoption of the calendar for this coming year?
Make a motion for adoption of the calendar.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Further discussion? All in favor, please signify.
Aye.
Adoption of policies. President Nolan?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, before you found within the agenda materials under tab 5 are a broad array of policies that begin the transition of governance from the Board of Regents to the Board of Trustees. Over the course of the next couple of years, I anticipate that there will be an item on your agenda related to policies. The policies that are presented today walk through a variety of areas, policies ranging from academic policies to student policies to policies within the realm of technology. There are a number of major policies at the institution that we'll bring to you in June. For example, the tenure promotion policy is not contained within your notebook because we would like for that to work through the Academic Affairs Committee of the board and then ultimately to the board. The policies have been developed over about an 8-month-long time period. Once again, the committee that I referenced, chaired by Dr. Linville, the Governance Transition Task Force Committee, has moved these process through a strenuous review by faculty, staff, and students. Many of the policies are directly referenced in the Focus Act. Many of the policies also align with requirements of our accrediting body, SACS. The predominance of the policies that you are taking action on today existed within the Board of Regents landscape, and we are, for all intents and purposes, removing the phrase Board of Regents and replacing them with Board of Trustees. Once again, there are a number of policies that, based upon questions that emerged with members of the Board of Trustees, have been adjusted since the meeting materials were presented to you. So that same sheet that I referenced earlier, I draw your attention to that sheet again for slight amendments to policies since your receipt of the board materials a couple of weeks ago. Those adjustments are as follows. First, within academic policy related to general policies on research, which within your agenda materials is page 40. You see the addition of the text in red and all subsequent related executive orders and regulations. The policy that was originally contained within your material on faculty non-instructional assignments has been pulled. That will be considered in concert with the tenure and promotion policy that will come before the board here in a couple of months. The policy related to the commitment to teacher preparation, there was an invalid hyperlink in the agenda materials. So what you're seeing here is that be pulled, just the reference to that hyperlink removed. Within the academic policy commitment to teacher preparation, the word employer should be replaced with the word employee. And then under student rights and freedoms, you see the first sentence with the text, each Tennessee Board of Regents institution. That text has been removed, replaced with East Tennessee State University. And then you see the further clarifications to that item, which in your printed materials can be found on page 149. Mr. Chair, once again, the policies that are presented for your and the board's consideration have worked their way through an internal process over an 8-month time period. I would be happy to take any questions that you or other members of the board have about the policies as presented in the agenda materials.
Having no further question, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next item of business on the agenda is item 10, confirmation of the Director of Internal Audit. The annotated code requires the Board of Trustees apply a qualified individual to serve as Director of Internal Audit. Furthermore, as noted in our bylaws, the internal auditor reports directly to the Board of Directors through our Audit Committee. Upon the recommendation of President Nolan, it is my pleasure to offer Ms. Rebecca Lewis for your consideration as the Board and University's internal auditor. Ms. Lewis presently serves as the university's Director of Internal Audit, a position she has held since July 2011. She holds a master's degree in accountancy from ETSU, is a member of the Institute of Internal Auditors and the Association of College and University Auditors, and has been continually licensed to serve as a CPA in the state of Tennessee since 1996. Do Do I have a motion for Ms. Lewis?
I move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Welcome. Next is 11, delegation of authority to the president. As detailed in the agenda, item following tab 7, the Board of Trustees may delegate to the president such powers and duties as necessary to ensure the efficient administration of the institution and its programs. The resolution, as listed in the board materials, affords the authority to the president to manage the day-to-day operations of the university and to make necessary expenditures, personnel hires, or obligations on behalf of the university. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, good. I ran out of page.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the next portion of the agenda, I hope will be a little bit more conversational. We have moved through some very heavy lifting in a short period of time. We have adopted bylaws, adopted conflict of interest statements. We've elected chairs, we've formed committees. We have, for all intensive purposes, established the foundation organizationally for the board. What I'd like to do now is to have a conversation that goes back to the confirmation hearings in Nashville. Many of you asked me a series of questions related to where have we been as an institution, where are we as an institution, and where do I see us moving forward? So what I'd like to do is to walk through some PowerPoint slides that try to paint that picture. Where have we been? Where are we presently? And where are we going? And this conversation will weave together two items on the agenda. It will weave together, one, the Committee for 125 review, and it will, two, then lead us into a conversation around the university's strategic plan. So as we're waiting for some slides to come up, well, they're like magic. So if we could go back one slide, please. So here you see a picture of our campus in autumn. That picture is taken from the fourth floor of the library. If you have had the opportunity to visit the fourth floor of the library, you know that there are rocking chairs that look out across campus. That's actually the most peaceful and quiet place on campus. It's a great place to read, it's a great place to reflect, but it's also a place in one snapshot to see the evolution of the institution. In the distance behind the trees is Alexander Hall, which is the home of the University School, which has been part of the institution since we opened our doors in 1911. The commemorative fountain in the middle of Borchuk Plaza celebrates and commemorates the bravery of those first students of color who enrolled at our institution and blazed a path forward that allows generations of individuals to realize their dreams at our institution. To the right is a building that many of you all may have had classes in time and time again. It's the home of departments such as political science. It's the home of departments such as psychology. But you see within that brief picture and snapshot a campus in fall. But what you really see if you look behind the picture and look into the granular nature of it is an institution that is rooted in history. And as we, if I make this work, hey, I've got control, all right. It's within that history that I just want to walk through a couple of slides. We opened our doors on October 2nd, 1911. A little known piece of Tennessee history, the Tri-Star flag flew for the very first time on our campus. Colonel Leroy Reeves designed the flag, and it flew here when we opened the doors for that dedication ceremony in the fall of 1911. 1924, our first name change. 1930, our second name change. And we moved through a series of name changes which signify the increasing complexity of the institution. 1974, a seminal moment in the history of the university with the creation of the College of Medicine. I referenced the Honors College earlier in my comments, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission's authorization for the College of Pharmacy. Mr. Powell, thank you for your leadership on that front. In 2010, we began our centennial celebration, and then in 2012, we launched a group called the Committee for 125. It's within the work of the Committee for 125 that I'd like to spend a little bit of time. That Committee for 125 was a group of individuals. Many of you around the table were members, and I'll get to a slide that shows the membership in a second. But that group reflected on who we are as a university. Within the conversation this morning with Carol Cartwright, she talked about mission, encouraging the board to reflect upon the mission of the institution, to reflect upon its mission statement, and to ensure that the actions of staff were congruent with the mission responsibilities as outlined in those two statements. As you see here on the slide in front of you, we've been consistent in our mission since we opened our doors in 1911. Our first president, Sidney Gilbreth, stated that the purpose of this institution was focused on meeting the needs and conditions of the state, particularly the people of this region. And as you fast forward 106 years, we've been recognized by entity after entity for our focused service to that mission. Our values have remained consistent, and I put these before you by design. These are the things that we as an institution embody. These are the values that we uphold every day of the week. People come first, they're treated with dignity and respect, and individuals are encouraged to achieve their full potential. Relationships are built on honesty, integrity, and trust. But these are the values that have been affirmed through the strategic planning process that Dr. Hoff will talk about in a little bit. These values were also affirmed by the work of the Committee for 125. So here's the group. Early in the presidency, I saw an opportunity for us to look forward as an institution. This was historical practice at the university. In 1986, there was a document that was published called Turning Towards 2011 as we celebrated our 75th anniversary, envisioning what the campus would look like at the centennial. So this group, many of the names are familiar to you. Our chair served as a member of the group, as did Trustee Grisham, looked at the institution, brought in consultants from across the nation to help us strategize where we wanted to be as we prepared for our 125th anniversary. That group looked at a number of policy items. They recognized that the policy landscape in the state was fluid. They recognized that in 1986, when we were celebrating our 75th anniversary, about 70 cents on the dollar of what it took to run this institution was provided by the state. They recognized that through the work of the Committee for 125, that ratio was about 30 cents on the dollar, and they projected that by our 125th anniversary, that ratio would be into the teens. So they recognized that during the planning cycle, the landscape would be fluid. That's what's referenced here with the privatization of public higher education. For all intents and purposes, in order to remain competitive, we have to look, plan, budget, and strategize as if we were a private institution because we are in a hyper-competitive landscape. They also recognized the demographics were shifting across the state of Tennessee. The traditional pipeline was changing. The individuals who were moving through that pipeline were much more diverse, and our ability to grow and change and adjust as an institution would be predicated on our ability to reach out to other demographic groups besides traditional high school students. There was a lot of work around the athletic infrastructure of the institution. At that time, the decision had not been made to return football to the portfolio of programs at the university. We were in the Atlantic Sun, so there was a lot of work around what role should athletics play in a modern comprehensive institution. There was conversations related to the philanthropic structure of the university. Did we need to adjust the nature, structure, and organizational elements of our foundation to align to this new paradigm? And then there were conversations about structural issues at ETSU. How are we organized? How does shared governance work? How do we budget? So over more than a year-long process, this group met, examining those issues, and worked to bring individuals from across the community together. We received feedback from more than 2,000 folks. There was a broad representative group of campus and community that came together. But what I share with you here are some of the things that emerged from that effort. So each one of the items on the screen before you are items that we as a campus have implemented as a result of the work of the Committee for 125. The committee urged us to change the way we plan and articulate budgets. We've done so. The committee encouraged us to look at new academic programs. Engineering emerged from the work of the Committee for 125. The group encouraged us to look at our institutional advancement structure in order for us to continue to do the things that we need to do to provide scholarships, endowed chairs, etc. We simply needed to restructure that institutional advancement profile. We've done so as a result of the leadership of the Committee for 125. At the time that this group came into existence, we had 132 logos. 132 logos. There was not agreement around the proper shade of blue and gold for the institution. Subsequently, we brought consistency to that, and we have one logo for all facets of the university. And I'm not going to read every single one of these, but the point is, we took that planning exercise seriously, and over the course of the past 5 years have been diligent in our efforts as a campus to begin implementing the things that were outlined within the work of the Committee for 125. There are, as we now prepare for the next transition, which is the transition to governance by the Board of Trustees, I wanted to take a little bit of time to set the stage of how the policy landscape is increasingly dynamic, and in fact more dynamic than it was when we began the work of the Committee for 125. But before moving into that slide, let me pause and see if you have any questions related to the material that I've just so quickly walked through. Any questions about the group, purpose, membership, what we did? All of this, by the way, is still on the web. So if you go to the ETSU website and type in Committee for 125, you can open up the committee deliberations. You can see the presentations that were presented to the committees. Some of the things were live streamed. You can still go back and watch the live stream of committee hearings. There are a lot of consultants reports around marketing the institution, consultant reports around academic programming. So all of that is there if you as trustees want to kind of reflect a little bit on that question of how did we get to where we are. That's why I wanted to draw your attention to the 125. So where are we presently? We are in a very dynamic landscape as it relates to student access. To say the pressure for enrollment growth is competitive is the understatement of the day. At every turn, we are looking for new markets in which we can position the institution. We are looking to ensure that we've protected the base here within Northeast Tennessee. We're looking at academic programming elements. But every week I receive from Dr. Bach and staff an update on where we are with respect to applications. Once a month, our senior staff meets to review what we can do to help the individuals in enrollment services meet their goal for the fall. Our goal for freshmen for the fall is 2,100. We may or may not hit 2,100, but that is the goal that we've established for the size of the freshman class. As a point of reference, this fall's freshman class was right around 1,880 something. So it's going to take some significant work to move from 1,800 to 2,100, but we've developed a very aggressive portfolio of activities to get us to that point. But access is more than just simply high school students. It's reaching out to first-generation students in Appalachia, which bring very different needs than students from inner-city Nashville, inner-city Memphis, or students from the Northeast. We're looking at students who have very different expectations of what the classroom experience should entail. They want access to technology all the time. Not even in the classrooms, they want it outside. Dr. Karen King and her staff do a great job of ensuring the moment you come on the campus and park your car, your wireless lights up. If you walk out to the center of campus now, you can fully access all the networks. They want that connectivity, but they also want the ability to connect with faculty in and outside of the classroom. That is a very different expectation than when we were in college. You're seeing us as a campus look at high impact practices that align with the funding formula, and Dr. Deaton walked you through those elements in the funding formula for which we are incentivized. We're aligning our practices to ensure that we maximize the opportunity in the formula. The second bullet from the bottom is one that I think is unique to our institution, and that is we must be prepared to react to not only Tennessee Promise, but North Carolina Promise. So in a year, students can attend Western Carolina University in Cullowhee for right around $1,000. We're an institution 3 years ago moved heavily and aggressively into Western North Carolina as a recruiting market. I think I've visited every single public and private high school in Asheville, and we've been extremely aggressive in Western North Carolina to grow our enrollment base. Well, now we've got to not only explore how we're positioning ourselves in Western North Carolina, but maybe moving a little bit more aggressively into South Carolina, because we've got Tennessee Promise pushing us to the west and North Carolina Promise pushing us to the east. So once again, a very fluid landscape with respect to access. And then the final elements are online offerings. I think we have among the most complex and diverse online programming within the state of Tennessee. We are looking at what happens with the change in the Board of Regents and our role in a statewide portfolio called RODP. You will see us bring before you in meetings to come some very aggressive ideas that will allow us to enhance our online presence. But that's a requirement if we're going to hit our enrollment goal that we'll present to you a little bit later that has emerged from the strategic planning process. That's an enrollment goal of 18,000 students. We're at 14,500 students presently. The only way we get to 18,000 students is if we aggressively market traditional students, non-traditional students, and online. So those are some of the issues that we're working through from a public policy perspective as it relates to access. We pause to see if there are any questions on the access domain before moving to the next. Next relates to academics. As you look across the academic landscape, not only of our institution, but the other institutions in Tennessee and across the country, you're seeing our university not only focus on enrolling students, but focus on ensuring that those students are retained and are successful along their path to a degree. Not only is that incumbent upon us because those students are borrowing to go to college, and I feel we have a moral responsibility to ensure that those students who are incurring debt realize the return on that investment. Having spent time in a state and visited rural Appalachia communities and visited with families who said, I'm never going to let my child go to college because college ruined my life. And I look with a moment of shock to the student and to the parent and say, well, how did college ruin your life? And they say, well, I went to college, I went into debt, I never graduated, and I'm still paying off those debt payments, and I have nothing to show for it. So I'm not going to let my kid make the same mistake as me. I feel we have a moral responsibility to ensure that students are successful along the path to degree, and we have a policy responsibility through the Complete College Tennessee Act. There's a lot of questions, and the questions emerged this morning. Mr. Neiswanger eloquently positioned his concerns about the responsibility of an institution not only to prepare students for a world beyond our mountains, but to prepare students to be successful in their careers and to ensure that they have meaningful job placement outcomes. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but these conversations are conversations that we as a campus have had, will have, and have been informed by as we look back upon the work of the Committee for 125. We're redesigning courses. We're trying to ensure that we're doing everything we can to remain relevant, because that notion of relevance for regional institutions is critical. How do we distinguish our institution from all of the other institutions in the state and across the country? How do we as faculty, do we as administrators, and do you as board members turn to a parent who may know nothing about East Tennessee State University and convey to them what makes us distinctive? Why should a student choose us over Western Carolina or Austin Peay? So that mission distinction is central to the conversations we're having within the academic domain. Any questions here?
Scott.
Yeah.
The Tennessee Promise started, they got the 2-year school. Will this fall be the first year that the kids, 2 years now they come to ETSU? Is this the first year or the second year?
This will be assuming the students move through
Right.
the pipeline in a traditional manner, graduate with their associate's degree this spring. This fall will be the first fall in which those students will be eligible to transfer. Now, we have had Tennessee Promise students transfer to the institution to date, students who may have taken a portfolio of dual enrollment in high school, took that 1 year at Northeast State, and then came to the institution. But the traditional thought of 2 years in transfer, yes, sir, this will be the fall.
So one way to kind of connect the students you're preparing to the world they're going to go into is through school level advisory boards, engineering school, pharmacy school, et cetera, et cetera. What's your feeling of how robust of an advisory board infrastructure you have right now?
Some of our advisory boards are more active and engaged than others. The advisory board for Dr. Depew in the College of Business and Technology is very active and engaged with the dean and the leadership of that college. The advisory boards for others are not as mature. I think that's one of the areas at future meetings where I think we do need to have a conversation, is how do those advisory boards relate to the Board of Trustees, and how do we create opportunities for those advisory boards to interact and connect with the conversations that we're having here. So I think that's an area where we as a campus need to focus as we now transition into this new era. Okay. Then transitioning to finance. So this is the third element in which the public policy landscape is dynamic. Each year you see private institutions that are closing their doors. Here within Central Appalachia, in the past couple of years, there have been a number of private institutions that have essentially closed their doors because their academic portfolio was not able to meet the needs of the market, or their enrollment activities were not able to ensure that they had a lifeline of revenue to meet the commitments across the institution. That is the landscape as it exists presently, and as you can see in the Standard & Poor's quote, that's the landscape in time to come. Particularly at risk are those small regional private institutions, but Standard & Poor's is also encouraging that large public institutions such as ours spend a great deal of time focusing on market, mission, niche, and relevance to ensure that we do not find ourselves in that position. You're seeing all colleges across the country embracing private markets. You're seeing all institutions across the country embracing things that heretofore have been within the domain of private institutions. In our institution, we used to describe fundraising as the margin of excellence. It's something that you did on the side to help raise a margin here or there. Now fundraising is central to our operations. If we're going to enhance scholarships, if we're going to enhance the level of endowed chairs, if we're going to meet the 25% of a capital match that's required to build a building, we have to be active and aggressive in our fundraising goals. That is the adoption of a private school model within a public institution. And when I talk a little bit later in the meeting about our budget process, you'll also see that we've changed the way we budget as an institution, looking much more like an institution in the private sector than a public sector. The last, in terms of a dynamic policy landscape, is kind of a catch-all. I used to work with a person who said that the individuals who reported to her were like an island of misfit toys, and she was the queen of the island of misfit toys. So these are the policy items that really don't fit into one domain, and they're just framed under the title Others. The first relates to athletics. We had the great fortune last week to participate in the NCAA tournament. I hate that number one for Florida played such a good game, because we would have beaten UVA, and we wouldn't be having this meeting because, Governor, we'd all be in New York. But that's not the case. But we were competing against institutions who had a very different financial portfolio than ours, institutions that have TV contracts and part of Power 5 conferences. We want to compete against the best, but we've got to recognize that the landscape of athletics here is different than the landscape of athletics at the Power 5. But changes that occur at the Power 5 impact us. When they move to total cost of attendance for scholarships, that impacts us. As conference alignments move, that impacts us. So while the complexity of the athletic domain for us is less dynamic than it would be for a University of Florida, and Alan, if you're watching, I hope you all win this afternoon. For us, it's complex nonetheless. The next item relates to philanthropy, community engagement, and alumni support. We must reach out to our alumni. We must move our alumni giving rate from right around 2.5% to a number that's 5, 6, 7%. Because in order for us to realize the goals of our strategic plan and the goals that I think you all are going to impart upon the institution, we've got to generate revenue from sources other than students and other than the state. So that's just a given within this landscape. We also need to be much more active when it comes to research. One of the things that we're very hopeful for with some of the policy conversations that are occurring in East Tennessee in our healthcare domain is that those investments would jumpstart research at the university. We're also being mindful of conversations in Washington, where there are proposals to significantly reduce NIH and NSF funding. If those funds were reduced, some of the work that we're doing to fight the opioid addiction that's impacting our region would no longer be present. So I encourage all of you as members of the board to pay attention to the conversations in Washington related to federal funding for NIH and NSF, because that will impact our institution. Another item is the governance transition. As we discussed this morning, today's not the be-all, end-all of the transition from TBR to the Board of Trustees. You as a board will need to certify to the state, to the Higher Education Commission, that we are ready to take over capital, that we're ready to take over procurement, and some of the other elements in the handoff. So that's something that is unique in the policy process. I think that also there's a lot of changing expectations around the role of diversity, inclusion, and the role of higher education as a curator of democracy. This one I kind of put in because I'm a political scientist. I think it's important that we as institutions provide a base understanding of the complexity of our democratic systems, and that all of us exercise our franchise responsibilities. And that's one of the things that we as an institution have the opportunity to do, is to provide individuals with that base set of general education knowledge. And from my perspective, I hope everyone takes Intro to American Government, even though I'm not teaching it in the fall. And then the final element is just simply that related to healthcare. At the local level, everyone's familiar with the conversations that are occurring between Mountain States and Wellmont, which could be transformational in terms of their impact both on the region and the university. Conversations at the state level, and then conversations today at the federal level related to healthcare that ripple down and impact this institution. We do more than educate nurses, physicians. We have clinical operations across Northeast Tennessee. We are the healthcare safety net for this region. Thousands of East Tennesseans depend on us for care. In fact, if it were not for many of our nurse-managed clinics, people would go unserved. So from our perspective, this healthcare dynamic is not just an educational dynamic, it's a provision of care dynamic that you as members of the board and all of us need to pay attention to. So any questions on my Island of Misfit Toys slide before moving on to the next? So a couple of data points to set the stage, and many of these were in your trustee briefing materials. So you're going to look at it and say, oh, wait, I saw that slide before. I'm not going to show you all 84 slides, I promise you. I'm just going to pull a couple that help set the context. This slide has been selected because it shows the shifts that have occurred across the state. As you look at our enrollment, many of you have already asked the question, well, why did we go from 15,500 students to 14,500 students? My little bit of a flippant response was, well, I've done such a good job as president that we lost 1,000 people. But in all seriousness, the changes here are reflected across the state as a whole. You see, we peaked in the state in terms of enrollment right after the economic downturn in 2008, and then that trend has somewhat normalized. So our headcount enrollment is above where it was in 2006, but across all the institutions, minus one or two, you've seen an increase and then decrease in enrollment over the course of the past few years. This next slide is a slide that outlines for you elements related to those specific enrollment points for each institution. For those of you who give a lot of presentations, you know, put up a slide with small font and you can say whatever you want, people will believe you. But I assure you that this slide outlines enrollment across each of the institutions with a point of 2005 on the front and a point of 2015 on the back. But as you look across those institutions, you see enrollment decreases in the community colleges. You see enrollment decreases at almost every institution that's not the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. But I draw your memory back to my comments on the landscape for access. Our access issues are different than the access issues in Austin Peay because we do not have a booming metropolis 30 miles down the road. We have 30 miles to the east of us, a state which is exercising their version of promise. So as you watch our numbers move forward, I want to encourage you that it's not a fair comparison to compare us to Austin Peay or to Martin. You've got to put our numbers within context of the environment in which we are competing. This is another slide that I think is of importance because it shows the changes that are occurring within our freshman class. So in the fall of 2012, prior to Promise, right at 2,000 freshmen, you see the average high school GPA and the ACT score. This past fall, 1,886 students, my memory was right, an average high school GPA of 3.5 and an ACT score of 23.2. As a frame of reference, the incoming GPA for this year's freshman class is equal to that of my alma mater, West Virginia University. This is a very different freshman class than we've traditionally had at the institution. This is a very traditional freshman class. High-achieving students academically, students who, based upon their demographics, should move through the pipeline with higher retention rates and higher graduation rates. That is a significant change. A 22.1 to a 23.2 is not a statistical anomaly. That is a significant and purposeful change in the composition of our freshman class. And we're being aggressive in recruiting. You can see that we're now recruiting students as early as the 10th and 11th grade, talking to them about the things that occur on our campus, and we are very, very active in this area. But just a slide for you that shows how the freshman class at this institution is changing. Governor.
Doctor, your point about the challenges, like I said, with North Carolina Promise, Tennessee Promise, and not having the growth of, say, a Clarksville at Austin Peay are real. But I would think the encouraging things are two things. You have the pipeline that Promise is bringing that Mr. Ramsey talked about. Second thing is the higher attention means you're going to have a lot more juniors and seniors, period. I mean, the better students, a lot more juniors and seniors, period, right? They're just going to. Right. So those are two encouraging things for you.
And particularly with the improved retention and graduation rates, when I meet with parents, one of the first questions that they ask is, what's your graduation rate? Because the majority of our students are borrowing to go to college, and as we make diligent efforts to improve the retention and graduation rates, I think that also will help us with recruitment to say, if you come to ETSU, we're an institution with a 60% graduation rate, and we're not at 60% at the current moment in time. The next data point is equally tight, but this one shows our retention rates. These are the number of students who start at ETSU and return anywhere in the fall. That's the frame of reference of where we are presently. And when Dr. Hoff walks you through the strategic plan, you'll see where we want to move that retention rate, which is north of 85%, which is about where Knoxville's is. Here are our graduation rates, and those are our graduation rates by racial classification. We must make improvements for students of color who attend our institution. The graduation rates for Caucasian students are relatively acceptable at 54.8%. I'd like to see the number for all students north of 60. So when we talk about the importance of developing programs around diversity, around inclusion, around culture, those programs are being built and developed to ensure that all students who enroll at the institution have the opportunity to realize that dream of walking across the stage and receiving a degree. We've got a lot of work here to do, and I hope that as we move forward in the years to come, that these slides are slides that you hold me accountable for. What have we done to move these numbers from the time in which you're seeing them for the first today? This one, I hope you don't hold me accountable for, because there's not much that I can do about it. And this slide shows the decline in appropriations for public institutions vis-a-vis the Southern average. SREB is the Southern Regional Education Board. Those are the 16 states of the South from Delaware to Texas, and you see Tennessee's trend. So when Dr. Deaton was walking you through slides today, this is another way of showing that same trend. Over time, we are shifting from a public good to a private good as it relates to the investment in post-secondary education. Here's the same slide that Rush showed you this morning, so I'll move past the slide since we spent a lot of time on it. And I'm pretty sure this is my last slide. This is a slide that shows our tuition and fees in comparison to our peers. We are showing peers by design because as we look to recruit faculty and staff to the institution, as we measure ourselves against those institutions with similar missions, similar academic programs, this is the competition. The competition is places like East Carolina University. The competition is Marshall University. The competition is Old Dominion University. So as we're looking to recruit nursing faculty, as we're looking to recruit pharmacy faculty, as we're looking to recruit faculty in the College of Medicine or faculty in my discipline, political science, we're recruiting on a national market. So we often look to what's happening at Knoxville or Martin or Chattanooga or Austin P or Tech. We're recruiting against them somewhat, but this is our peer competition. This is the peer set. So I wanted to provide you a lens of how our tuition and fees compares to those peers. Because tuition and fees are a prime driver of salary. The question Mr. DiCarlo asked earlier today, where are our sunk costs? Our fixed asset are faculty and staff. 70 cents on every dollar that we spend are invested in faculty and staff. And if 70 cents on every dollar comes from tuition and fees, I can guarantee you that Central Michigan and Oakland, which are at the top here in terms of tuition and fees, will also be at the top in terms of faculty and staff salaries. So just a context of where we stand with respect to tuition and fees vis-a-vis peers. So let me pause here to see if there are any questions before stepping back and asking Dr. Rhoda to come to the podium. Any questions on the material that I walked through? So what I'd like to do, and we're going to do a little bit of a clicker handoff here. I've just walked you through where have we been and where are we. Before we transition into where are we going, which is the overview of the strategic plan, I wanted to ask Dr. Rhoda, the Executive Director Emeritus of the Tennessee Higher Education, to talk a little bit about the policy landscape. Dr. Rhoda is also the Interim Dean of the Clemmer College of Education. So Dr. Rhoda, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Nolan, Governor Haslam, Chairman Niswonger, members of the board, ETSU colleagues. Dr. Nolan has asked me to say a few words, kind of from a national perspective on where things are in higher education and perhaps a look forward, and I'm pleased to do that. First, I would like to say on a point of personal privilege how honored I am to be a part of this event today. As others have said before, this is a defining moment in the history of the university as well as across Tennessee higher education as well. So I congratulate the members, the charter members of the ETSU Board of Trustees. You truly are in a position to shape how things are going to go going forward, and that's just a historic moment, so congratulations. So my remarks will be in three broad areas, and they will be brief. First, and Carol Cartwright touched on this morning in her remarks, but just, what about higher education on the national level? Characterize it as vast and complex and ever diversifying. Just a point, we know what Tennessee higher education is like, the magnitude, but nationally there are 4,600 different colleges and universities, and that's across all sectors, public, private, and for-profit. Collectively, they educate approximately 20.5 million students this year, which is just a phenomenal number in its own right. Collectively, American higher education, and Russ talked about this morning, it is a multi-billion dollar enterprise and ever growing and ever shifting within how revenues generated and expenditures are made. But I guess I would say some of those metrics will ebb and flow nationally or even within the state, but one thing that isn't changing is the importance of higher education is ever increasing to us as individuals, as families, as communities, as states, and certainly our country. And that's what is American higher education is a great enterprise to be a part of. So the chart you have up there that Dr. Nolan has put together, this gets into the complexity of the issues that colleges and universities are dealing with, not so far in the past and now, and kind of projecting where we're headed in the future. This slide is actually developed by ASCU, which is the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, which is a national Washington-based organization of institutions like ETSU. They're comprehensive public universities. There's some 400 of them that are members of ASCU. And every year, the organization asks their presidents to identify the top 10 or top number of campus-based policy issues that they're dealing with. And I think the takeaway there is, again, they may change slightly, they may change in orientation, but there is some common thread there as we move forward, but they're all based, you can group them around student access to higher education, affordability, successful completion, providing for a safe learning environment on campus. So this gets more into not only what Carol was talking to you about, but you particularly as Dr. Nolan and his faculty and staff. Yes, sir.
Rich, sorry for the interruption, but degree production, could you give us the context of that? What does that actually mean?
Well, that's the broad term, but it is more students successfully completing a college education. Right. And that one's an interesting one because it's, we use the term production. What does it mean? But it's all about well, it's kind of what the Drive to 55 is all about, a tangible credential. So, also within this, and Dr. Nolan was the one that brought this to my attention, we used to talk in these broad terms about the iron triangle of policy issues. And you don't see that up there, but basically it's thinking in terms of a triangle with state support for higher education, tuition and fees coming from students, and financial aid, and trying to shape that triangle in ways as a policy lever to get more production, to be more efficient, those kind of natures. And so that term kind of came and went, but iron triangle, Bermuda triangle, kind of. So the last thing I wanted to mention, and others before me, Mike Krause, Rusty, and Dr. Nolan have all talked about this, and that the fact that Tennessee is recognized as a national leader in higher education and higher education policy. I really don't want to repeat what they said, but I would like to add a few thoughts perhaps on how this has happened. So, one thing, it is unprecedented, I would submit, I know in Tennessee, but perhaps in the country, to have two governors back to back who have appreciated higher education in the sense of its public policy and how it can contribute to the overall state's agenda. So both Governor Haslam and his predecessor, Governor Bredesen, brought something special together that triggered a lot of thoughts, and we're very thankful to them for that. Both governors recognize that governance structure matters, and it does have an impact on how institutions function. And they viewed governance as a vehicle to strengthen the ability of the institutions to better serve students and carry out not only the working condition of the institution, but to carry out state policy. And I would say that both realize that governance change was not something to be taken lightly, that it should be for a purpose. And I can't be that objective of what I'm about to say, but I think both governors enabled THEC to mature and develop as a policy-based entity, so it could be useful to the overall governance of the institutions. So, looking forward to bring us to where today we are, the Focus Act was a bold and wise move on the part of public policy move, in my judgment, a next step for Tennessee higher education. The new structure overall will empower ETSU and her sister universities to thrive under independent, more focused guidance and governance of this particular board. And there's every reason to believe you'll be doing not only those issues, but those are maybe more regional to you. So again, I congratulate all the board for your selection and appointment to this board. And I would note that ETSU, again, I can't be that objective, but ETSU does have an advantage perhaps over sister universities with a very capable president, a very capable executive staff, and just a genuinely fine faculty. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now get ready to transition to Dr. Hoff. So I wanted to set Dr. Hoff's comments within the context once again of where have we been, where are we, and where are we going. I want to also ask you to reflect upon the charge that Carol Cartwright gave you this morning during the professional development session. She challenged you to look at mission, and she challenged you to look at the mission statement of the institution, then looking at how those two elements align with the strategic plan. She asked me the question, Brian, where are you in the strategic plan? We are bringing that plan to you today. We delayed the implementation of that plan to provide the opportunity to present it to you today. This is a plan that as a campus we've been working on for almost 18 months. It's a plan that has been vetted, and Dr. Hoff's going to talk at length about its development and the vetting process. But it's a plan that sets forward a vision for the institution that allows us to realize our mission-specific responsibility, and that is to improve the quality of life for the people of East Tennessee. If we're an institution that enrolls 20,000 students and they're not engaged with this region, we've not been true to that mission. If we're an institution that is recognized nationally for its research, but that research does not make a difference in the lives of the people of the region, we've not been true to our mission. So as Dr. Hoff walks you through the SWOT process and the development of the strategic plan, I just ask you to keep that mission in front of us. How do each of us on a daily basis make a difference in the lives of the people of the region? It's that question that's guided the institution since we opened our doors in 1911, and it's that question that I hope will continue to guide the institution in the years to come. So Dr. Hoff, I'm going to turn it over to you. Could you take one?
Thanks, Dr. Nolan, members of the board, Mr. Chairman, members of the gallery. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you the strategic plan for East Tennessee State University. I'd like to take a minute while this is being passed out to introduce myself to you. Many of you probably don't know me. My name's Mike Hoff. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Cincinnati and 2 graduate degrees from the University of Northern Kentucky. The president was talking with you about what can you do to improve the lives of the people in this region. So I would like to start with, I'm from Johnson City, and up until 2013, when I moved back here to work, I was contributing negatively to East Tennessee State University because my mother was going to East Tennessee State University, and although she tells me I'm not the reason that she stopped, I'm at least part of the reason that she never came back. So I'm devoted to making sure that I improve retention at East Tennessee State University because my first act as a person was a negative one. If we take a look at what's happened, and we talk about what we're moving toward next. In October 2015, the president asked the Interim University Council to create a planning committee and charged that committee to prepare a 10-year strategic plan. This was unique because often we talk about 3 to 5 year plans. A 10-year plan was partly facilitated from TEC through TBR in the planning cycle that they took on, which allowed for that broader horizon. We were charged with including wide university input, and we were also charged with including the vision that was established in the Committee for 125, which sort of fit nicely with part of our delay, as the president mentioned, because it allowed an opportunity to get halfway there. The vision from 125 is for the year 2036. This gets us halfway to that vision. We also looked to give consideration to a process that had started directly after 125, and that was several committees that worked independently of one another to develop strategies to improve particular parts of ETSU. That'd be the budget process and model, the academic portfolio, administrative services, research and scholarly activity, community and public service, and all of the current college and unit strategic plans. So here's what that looks like graphically. We started with and some of this terminology will be terminology you've seen in your organizations as you've undergone strategic plans. We did an environmental scan, which was 125. We did priority and strategy development, which was the IUC and the University Planning Committee. Then we started the process of building the plan. And part of the reason this one is partially highlighted is to draw your attention to a particular item, which is departmental goals. That right there is sort of the crux of what signifies the difference in this planning process and what we hope it will mean for the future. Decentralizing decision-making is the only way that large organizations can improve where they are. I'm sure that if I asked any of you in your business practices when you first started out, it was probably a handful of people. Where they are today, would you still want it to be a handful of people? No, you want to empower people to do things that broaden the capability of the organization. And that's part of what that next step is after the approval of this plan. I want to talk to you a little bit about the SWOT analysis. This is important because we started out with several small groups that incorporated chairs, faculty, deans, university leadership, and then we sent a survey to the campus that had over 1,000 respondents. The academic health sciences you've already heard mentioned. You've already seen slides that indicate our affordability and their scholarships. We talk about the great faculty, academic programs, and students that we have. We also probably don't talk enough about how beautiful East Tennessee is, because that's part of the draw of coming to East Tennessee, is the mountains and what that means. And we have some weaknesses, and this is probably the most important part. An organization that can be honest with itself about its weaknesses is an organization that can improve. We have low faculty and staff salaries. I'm going to call some people out probably as I go through here, and I don't mean to do it in a negative way, but we talked about the cost of education has gotten a little bit better over the years. At least part of that is because we're not quite at the salary equity we would like to be. And so we've devoted some of the attention that we're going to have here. We have a limited university budget. We have a lack of communication. Although I think we had, at the time this was done, a lack in transparency and decision-making, the amount of things that have driven university decisions in the past month alone that have been streamed or recorded for the campus is larger than it's probably been in the past decade in total. So I think we're moving the needle on that. We have too few tenured and tenure-track faculty. As you get to know my role at the institution, which is responsible for overseeing the activities of institutional research, strategic planning, institutional effectiveness, and resource analysis, you'll get to know pretty well that I'll create some data for you that will allow you to investigate many of these and exactly understand how much and to the magnitude of a weakness these might be. But these are the ones that we felt were most important for the strategic plan. So what are the opportunities? Increase faculty and staff salaries, increase academic reputation. We talk a lot about what makes us distinctive. And when I was in Cincinnati and I got the job here, people would ask me, they would say, East Tennessee State University, where is that? And I say, they have a medical school. And they would go, oh, it must be a good place. I mean, that's an easy one. We can all say that if you have a medical school, that works. But we need to do it in some of the other areas, and we need to be able to leverage those and have those ready. We need to grow graduate programs. A big thing right now, as part of the educated workforce makes their way up into the next level of the workforce, is they need graduate degrees. They need advanced education. Some of that is professional as opposed to research-based. Practical education gives people jobs, and it moves the needle on economic development and improving the region. We need to grow the honors program and improve the student experience. Also down there was the health systems merger. That is probably an opportunity, and depending on what happens later, it could be a strength, a weakness, a threat. We'll see how that goes. We would like it to be a strength, and I think we're on a good path for that. Again, the threats, a limited university budget. And the reason that shows up here again is because we cannot rely on the external environment to improve our financial situation. The only way we're going to improve the fiscal sustainability of ETSU is to do it ourselves. We have low morale. I think that morale is getting better. For the past 3 years, and currently, we're doing a survey that is called the Great Colleges to Work For. Just a plug for that. If you've gotten invited, please complete it. The reason that that's important is that over those 3 years, we have seen, I think, an improvement in the rating of the institution. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with the transparency that we've made available to people and being open and vulnerable for those discussions. Competition from two-year schools. We've talked a lot today. I've seen in your earlier sessions about Tennessee Promise. I have my own thoughts about some of that, but we need to maintain an appropriate number of full-time faculty. There was a question about that earlier today, and just recently I presented to the Faculty Senate. From 2015 to now, from 2012 to 2015 to now, the percent of courses that are taught by full-time faculty at ETSU has grown. The number of adjunct faculty has grown. It's just they're teaching a lower percent of the courses. The nuance of that discussion is in the topic that we discuss in the weaknesses, tenured track faculty. There are a lot of different ways you can talk about faculty. Full-time, part-time is just one of them. The qualifications within those categories are important too. We also have competition from four-year schools. I've heard tell of an institution that's in our state that drives a bus down pretty close to us and tries to recruit some students that go here. There's some other things like that. Just this year, we had another institution who made a information request for a listing of our undergraduate students in order to encourage them to go to graduate school at another institution. The kind of competition we face from other institutions is different. When the resources for an institution are only improved within the institution, it's natural that that kind of competition will happen. So these are the key points: the vision, mission, and values for the strategic plan, the 6 strategic areas. The data measures are focused on students, employees, and fiscal sustainability. They're designed to encourage decentralization. I talked about that before. And their plan, really what we want is for people who are faced with the decision to be able to make it, or the people that have the ability to be innovative can do it. And the plan calls for a focused execution of planning objectives at the department unit level. The reason that you've seen a lot about the vision and mission, and there's been a lot of topics about that today, is part of what we're asking you to do when you approve this plan is the vision, mission, and values of the institution, and we'll go through that. That's a part of the printed packet that you have before the meeting, as well as the document that I handed out today. The president already touched on a lot of this. And when we talk about some of these values, I think it's important that there's one item in here, and it gets a lot of conversation because it's sometimes a political term, but this isn't meant to be political. ETSU endorses the value of a liberal education. And I thought it was important that I actually read to you what the AACU defines as a liberal education. It's an education that empowers individuals with broad knowledge and transferable skills, and a stronger sense of values, ethics, and civic engagement. Characterized by challenging encounters with important issues and more a way of studying than a specific field. The reason that I think that is important is if we all were able to say we did that, we know we would improve the region, because those kinds of people that you can define with that language, change things. So here is the strategic framework. These are the 6 areas that we think if we focus on these 6 areas, we can move the needle on the metrics that I'll share with you at the end. Supporting a strategic growth agenda that maximizes the student experience both inside and outside the classroom. The governor asked about Tennessee Promise in relation to a question about the people being able to enroll and transfer at ETSU. When we talk about that, what we hope is that that happens. What we know is that if we don't provide the students the experience that they want, there's another institution just about 90 miles down the road that might. That student experience, that's the kind of competition. We have to be able to offer something that is unique and distinctive. Ensuring the diversity and inclusion of all people and ideas. And then the staff development. That is very big. If we develop our staff, they will develop our students. And I know when it comes to staff development, we have some people in the room that have a particularly high level of skill in that area, and I think you see the results of that in your business. I mean, if you can be good to people, they'll be good to your customer. Supporting excellence in teaching, expanding the foundation for scholarly research and creative activity, excellence and innovation in all disciplines. Leading the region forward through community engagement and service. We'll talk a lot over the period of the next few years about what makes us different. And what is one of the things that makes us different from the 2-year degree that Tennessee Promise is designed to give? Service and research are going to be 2 of the biggest things. Now, Tennessee Promise does a good job of requiring service, so they're partnering with some of that. But the kind of service opportunities we can make available go beyond. We've heard talk about the nursing clinics and some of the other health impacts. There's a wide variety of service at this institution. So here are the strategic goals. 18,000 students, 3,500 out-of-state and international students, 2,000 transfer students. We talked about a graduation rate of 60%, retention rate of 85%. We want 12,000 freshman applications, $60 million for research and other extramurally sponsored activities, $25 million in annual giving, 10% alumni giving rate, 3,500 students on campus, and then there's that salary equity. So what does that mean? How big of a task is that? It's a pretty big task. In order to get there, in order to get to 18,000 students, we need to add to the enrollment base 327 students every year. You heard the president talk about freshman goal of 2,100 students. It's important. It's important in the first year, because if we don't get there, that number is going to go from 327 to 330. Every year after that we don't get there, that number is going to get bigger. And part of the way that I know that, part of the reason that goal is where it is the Drive to 55 has a set of goals for each institution. And in order for us to graduate the number of people that is expected of East Tennessee State University to meet its obligation for the Drive to 55, the only way we get there is to enroll 18,000 students. We talk about out-of-state and international enrollment. We do a good job with out-of-state enrollment already because of the border county, but we need to do better. We have a unique situation because our academic reputation is actually good if we go outside of the state of Tennessee. Because we're a border institution, we're going to have to move east to grow. And that's sort of a unique proposition given some of the funding constraints. We heard talk about the transfer students. The transfer student enrollment's already gone up from 15 to 16. That's in large part due to embedded advisors. When you take the time to have hands-on experiences with people, they can do attention, and that's what's happened with our transfer enrollment. We look at the graduation rate of 60%. Right now, it's at 40.1. 40.1 is the graduation rate in 6 years from East Tennessee State University for a first-time full-time freshman who starts at East Tennessee State University. I could increase that number by 7%, for sure, because 7% of the people that are first-time full-time students at East Tennessee State University graduate from some other four-year school on time. 7%. 7%. When we talk about the retention rate, we have seen some success. The president talked about the profile of the incoming classes. We've talked a lot about it, the president and I. We kind of feel like if we could hold on through this next year and the rodeo that it presents, we're going to see the benefits of all the work that's been put in on the front. We talk a lot about graduation rates. Graduation rate is a 6-year metric. It's 150% of normal time. It is a long indicator. When we talk about retention rate and we talk about credit load, we're talking about short-term indicators of the graduation rate. That retention is going up and that the average credit load has went up almost a whole credit hour over the last 3 years is a big deal. Because we know from research that the more credit students accumulate, the more likely they are to graduate. And that's our goal. Revenue, it's received $60 million in revenue for research. We're at 38 million. That is a tall order to get from 38 to 60, but it's not impossible because we looked at the data that is collected at the national level to see if anybody in 10 years was able to go from 38 million to 60 million, and somebody did do it. So we already know that it's possible because the university did it. I received $25 million in annual giving and have a 10% alumni giving rate. We talk about students living on campus. We know that students who live on campus become more engaged students. We know engaged students retain and graduate. Those are the things that matter. If a student's on campus, the likelihood that they'll have an out-of-class experience with a faculty member that is not related to the course goes up. And that matters because if you ask students what some of the biggest factors in their graduation were, that's what it was. When I was at the University of Cincinnati, I started out pre-med. I took every science class I could take in high school. I was going to be a cardiologist. I'm not kidding. The summer between high school and college, I read 3 or 4 books on cardiology. Personal experiences. My grandfather had a heart attack. I was going to save people like him. After my first year, I thought about dropping out. And my English teacher told me that I should probably change my major to something that suited law school. Because when everybody wrote their debate papers, they used my argument. So I became a political scientist, and I haven't had to be real specific about anything ever since. And so when we talk about the applications, 12,000 applications, the last 3 years, an average of 7,000. We're on track to beat that average right now. I think last night we were around 7,700. That's important. This right now, for an initiative that we've already started, it'll be the 3rd year that we've done it, and so it'll be the 1st year that juniors have the opportunity to be involved. I am very optimistic that a few things are going to come together this summer. We talked about Tennessee Promise in the 1st year that some students could transfer. We talked about, I just told you about the application increases and things like that. If all those things come together and the junior class that is right now stays and graduates next year, our enrollment problems should start to mitigate themselves. What I'm saying is we think we're at the bottom of the curve. We're optimistic. So lucky you guys, you'll get to talk about how great things have been since you got here. But with that, I would...
Before you leave that slide, just note of clarification on the salary for faculty and staff. That's 3.5% on top of inflation, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But when we talk about equity, we're talking about a target that's set relative to peers. And so peers don't move exactly at the rate of inflation, so it's not quite.
Well, 3.5% upon the peer movement, because if you're 35% below and you're closing the gap over 10, you're assuming your peers aren't moving.
Yeah. They haven't moved very much the last couple of years. We've gained some ground.
Well, they may have the same goal.
They do. They do. They do. They just don't have as good of a plan. We wanted to present an opportunity to have a discussion. So the questions on the board are questions that should generate some discussion among the group, and I'm happy to facilitate that. How do we increase enrollment in environment challenged by the tensions of access and affordability? How do we diversify tuition revenues across regional, national, and international markets? How do we enhance graduate education? How do we deal with competition, like the emergence of new health science schools across the region? I'll answer any question that you ask. Go ahead.
No, did you ask for questions?
Yeah, you can ask questions.
I had one comment that it was coming a little later, but when I saw your research dollar, everyone in this room is critically aware of how important emergent two hospital units are. And Mike, along with that comes filling that bucket to $60 million by funding the East Tennessee State University Research Foundation, which exists today but has no funding.
Right.
The corpus is there but has no funding. But that will be the greatest change, the greatest impact in terms of dollars that we can make in the strategic plan as we draw closer and closer to a final decision on those two groups coming together.
Yeah, I think so.
Just to amplify that point, you know, the challenge of university is pretty staggering. You're preparing students to launch them into a world that the world of the jobs they may take by the time they graduate didn't even exist their freshman year. I mean, the rate of change is pretty phenomenal. And so things like research efforts that are more connected to real world and other things you can do to connect to real world, I think can help better prepare those freshmen as they approach senior, graduate school, and the real world, and make your graduates more valuable. And so I didn't really see crisply, you know, that challenge, connecting students to real world upon graduation. You may give that some consideration, back to my comment around advisory boards and other places.
We've had a lot of discussions. The staff in my area have had some roundtables with some employers in the area and some things like that. And I think one of the recommendations that I hope you'll see over the next few years is something more specific to the kind of co-ops and internships that create that environment. I came from the University of Cincinnati, which I don't know how true it is, but we tell every orientation class we're the home of co-op because it started in 1968 there. And so to me, that is a big deal, and I see how that connection plays out. So I'll make sure to keep an eye on that.
So one of the advantages you have is governance, which is put all this in place. Leadership, which is in place. A strategic plan, which is outlined. And now comes the challenge of focus. So on the next slide, all those questions, all those issues, where?
Where are they?
Where do you focus? You can't bite it all off.
Oh, well, you know, if you think about the ability of an institution and to face external pressures at the same time they try to drive their own ship, which is what we're talking about in this change. When you think about that, growth is a critical mass. A critical mass is the thing that ensures that mass continues. And I think a lot of people thought we got there in 2010. Not just us, but every institution that grew the way that they did. They thought, that's it, we're big enough, pardon the pun, we're too big to fail now. And that isn't exactly true. We haven't quite found that distribution because it's not only the size of your institution, but it's the quality within. We are a unique institution. I'm from here, and this is a unique place. The challenge that we have is balancing this, what could be perceived as a very high-level technical education with the needs of a first-generation college student who barely has enough money to pay for the food that they need to get through school. Those are very different aims. But if you're focused, I think, on growth, you can get to a fiscal sustainability that's good. We've kept our prices down. You saw some slides relative to that earlier. As we change prices, we can have those be relative to the outcomes of the student. But the first step, under the leadership of the president, is growth. We have to get bigger. We have a wide variety of academic programs. And when you look at that wide variety of academic programs, we need to start filling those in. More students in every one of them. And part of the reason I say that is when I'm responsible for overseeing institutional effectiveness. And we talk about staffing needs and how many people you need to do that. And somebody said, oh, well, this institution, has twice as many students as you do. Why would you need the same amount of people they do for institutional effectiveness? The unit of analysis in institutional effectiveness is not head count, it's program count. I've got the same number of programs they do. That's why. And so I think growth makes you have the ability to be a little bit more effective. You can staff a little more appropriately. You can grow faculty. Once you grow faculty, you grow research.
Mike, in the essence of time, we're going to have to move so much material here to cover, all very important. What I'd like to do now is call for a motion to accept the strategic plan, and then for us to work at each quarterly meeting on the update and how your trustees could be of help to you in achieving all of the goals that we've laid out. Do I have a motion to accept the strategic plan, please?
Make a motion to approve the strategic plan.
And a second,
Second.
and further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Second. Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't we skip ahead? He's going to time out, and some others will. Great. Since we have such a great opportunity to have our governor with us today, we have something coming up that's designed for the university to talk about legislative initiatives and the things that are going on. Well, what better than the man that's at the helm of that ship to talk a little bit about what's going on in Nashville.
Well, sure, I'll do my best. It's, maybe the two main questions this board would have would be, because in both the last two presentations, they talked a little bit about the state's budget as it impacts the university. So let me start there. That was an interesting, I don't know if it was which of the presentations, but they basically showed over a period of time the state's declining contribution to higher education. Well, we're not alone in that. That's a true slide, by the way, and that's not a 6-year slide. That's a 30 or 40-year slide, and it's true in every state. If you want to say, well, what's going on? Our state's getting chintzier. It's really simple. As Medicaid has grown as a percentage of states' budgets over the last 40 years, higher education was the one thing that had another payer. Prisons didn't have another payer, K-12 didn't have another payer, but higher ed had tuition to go to. So not just Tennessee, but everybody over 40 years has passed more and more of the responsibility for funding higher education to the institutions, or to the parents and teachers, I guess, parents and students, if you will. We've tried to stop that in Tennessee. The last 3 years, we've actually increased higher education funding considerably. We've been able to meet the formula for what we call the Complete College Act, and we intend to keep doing that. But it is a battle, and there's a lot of things that could impact that. One of those is that you might think, well, okay, they're getting ready to debate the health care bill, or they're trying to get enough votes up in Washington right now. I think Paul Ryan's trying to find every person he can to come vote at this as we speak. But what happens in healthcare on the national level I hate to say this, directly impacts ETSU, and not just because of the medical school and the hospital here. one way or another, I think the federal government is going to give states back more control over their Medicaid. I think that's a good thing. I think we can make better decisions to cover more people in a more effective and efficient way than they can. But it is going to change the game over time. So that's the big question mark over our budget. And like I said, it does, you might think, well, what's that have to do with us? It has everything to do because the state's budget only has so much room for growth and healthcare costs end up, squeezing higher ed. Our administration is, like I said, we said it as fortunately with the legislature, they agreed with the party to say, let's stop that slide of the decline to higher education. But I would say this to you all. One of your roles as board members is to lobby for higher education. If it ends up that because of Focused Act, we have 6 more schools that are lobbying for their school and their projects, this probably won't work out well. If all of you all descend on the legislators and say, you need to fund our new XYZ building, it probably won't end up well. But if you become an advocate for higher education overall, why this matters, what makes yours to have competitive faculty salaries and everything else that comes with that, then this really will work well. The good news right now in the state is our financial condition is good. We've been able to combine of having low taxes and low debt and increasing our savings account without, like I said, with increasing funding primarily to public education, which is what we've done, both K-12 and higher ed. And I hope to continue that as the state continues to stay in a good situation. But so the funding is good in this year's budget. You might say, well, when will the budget be finalized? When will the legislature go home? Might be your next question. My best guess is they're there for about 6 more weeks. Some of that is held up with, as you know, we have a big highway bill this year that where we're trying to lower the cost of grocery tax while we increase the amount of funds we have to pay for roads. I might throw I'm injecting my agenda to you now, but you might say, well, the big current debate is, should we take money out of the general fund to pay for roads, or should we pay for roads the way we always do? The people who use roads pay for them. I would argue as advocates for higher education, you want the general fund to go for the things we've always paid for general fund dollars with, was everything else, and roads should be paid for by the people who use them. I say that because there will always be budget pressure. Even in good times like this, there's budget pressure, and higher education is one of those things that lives on the edge. And those of you who've been around a long time understand is when we have good economic growth, funding increases for higher education. When we don't, again, history would show it's one of the things that's one of the first to lose its increase. So I'm lobbying a little bit for my own personal issue, but as the debate goes on in Nashville about do we fund roads out of the general fund budget or out of transportation users, I would hope you would argue we want it to be funded by transportation users because A, that's how we've always paid for, B, that's how it's fair, and C, that leaves more room in the general fund budget for ETSU and other education. So I will stop there. I'd be glad to answer any other questions. Lieutenant Governor Ramsey is not so far gone that he doesn't know what's going on there either, so I'm sure he could answer a few.
He's pretty far gone.
I bet he could still make a good guess. But I'd be glad to answer any questions or anything that anybody'd like to ask or points you'd like to make.
I'd like to make one.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here, having the wisdom to see this through. I know it took Herculean effort on the part of you and others to make this happen. But we will be a better state of higher learning because of the changes that you made with this act.
Well, thanks. And let me make one final comment. This is, I'm going to put my governor hat back on now. And ETSU being a great university is not just important for the university and the students and the faculty. It's really, and you all know this, it's why you're all sitting here, it's important for this whole region in a way that few other institutions are. And when you look at this part of the state, ETSU is the dominant institution. I'm not talking about just education, but it's more the health and welfare of this region, I think, depend more on ETSU than really anything else. So I appreciate you all being willing to do this. you're more than just serving the school. I really think you're serving the entire part of the state.
Thank
I'm
you.
done.
We understand if you need to back it up. Okay, where were we? Sacks. Item 14 is our SACS accreditation process. I'll ask Dr. Bach if he would give us a presentation on the information related to the policies and procedures with SACS. Dr. Bach.
I'm pleased to provide a report that addresses ETSU's reaccreditation as it is currently impacted by this change in governance that's represented this afternoon. As you probably know, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges is the regional accreditation whose standards ETSU must meet. In materials you were provided for this meeting, you received a briefing that described the university's present accreditation status with SACS, the requirements we have to address in light of the envisioned change of governance, a calendar of what we've accomplished to date and is being accomplished by actions you are taking this afternoon, and finally an indication of what is left to accomplish and the calendar for doing that. I'm not going to repeat the details of what is included in your briefing, but I will instead try to share with you succinctly 5 observations that I think define where we are at this point and what we have left to do. First, ETSU has been fully accredited by SACS since 1927. We were most recently affirmed in 2013. We have to submit a 5-year interim report in 2019 to document that we're continuing to meet the required standards. And we will have again to undergo a comprehensive reaffirmation visit in 2023. The standards or principles by which the institution is accredited or reaffirmed for accreditation include a specified list of core requirements, comprehensive standards, and federal requirements. Second, as might be expected, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges requires that institutions will likely change over that 5 or 10 year set of intervals of time that I noted. Because of that, the Commission specifies in its policies types of changes that should be reported and types of changes that it considers sufficiently substantive to require an out-of-cycle, on-site campus review by peer evaluators. The purpose of that requirement is to determine whether the change, once implemented, can be projected to assure that the university will continue to meet the standards of the association. A change in university governance is, in SACS nomenclature, a substantive change that warrants an on-site review by a team. Third, the calendar enumerated in your board materials indicate the required steps we have accomplished since we became aware of the envisioned change of governance and the need to address that substantive change. The president, our SACS liaison on campus, and I traveled to Atlanta in June of 2016 to receive directions as to how the requirements for this type of substantive change could be accomplished according to the calendar set forth in the Focus Act. We submitted, as required, a prospectus to SACS in August 2016. From that time to the present, we've gone through other steps that included our submitting various addenda to the prospectus as information became available on the composition of our board that now sits before us. A milestone was reached on the 15th of this month when we received confirmation that the Executive Council of the Commission Board of Trustees, acting on behalf of the board, has approved our change in governance and had authorized a SAC substantive change peer review team to visit our campus on May 15th through 17th. We will, of course, be preparing for that on-site team visit, and members of the governing board will be asked to participate in the meetings as specified. This morning, we received the names of the visiting team membership. Fourth, in preparation for the visit by the substantive change review team visit in May, the university will submit to the team a comprehensive report documenting our compliance with 20 standards which the commission has required that we address in the substantive change document. The 20 standards or principles that will be addressed in our comprehensive report and reviewed by the on-site visiting team are enumerated on pages 272 and 273 in your board materials. You may note that the general features of the list of standards that we'll review are these. Several of the standards can be addressed for documentation and updates of responses that we provided for ETSU at our last reaffirmation effort in 2013. Several of the other standards have been addressed either by legislation or by actions you have taken by bylaws in the meeting this afternoon. For example, the composition and authority of the board, the fact that the president is not a member of the board, the committee structure of the board, an approved mission statement that is appropriate and specific to the institution, a code of ethics with a conflict of interest policy. Other standards addressed in part by documentation we presented earlier pertain to budget and control of finances, compliance of federal requirements under Title IV, qualifications of staff, faculty role in governance, and so forth. And that takes us to what will happen after the March 15th to 17th on-site committee visit. We will receive in about a month or less the final committee report. If there are recommendations, we will have approximately 5 months to provide a written response. Specifically, the timeline will call for us to respond to the commission by October. That then is the scope and calendar for what ETSU has to do with respect to the substantive changes associated with our change in governance. Formal Commission on College action on our report and our status will take place at its December 2017 meeting. Be happy to respond to any questions you have.
Questions, folks?
Is this unprecedented for them?
I'm sorry?
Is it unprecedented for them? Because of the actions in Tennessee, the review process they have to go through for all 6 universities?
Yes, each of the universities will be following a similar process to this. Our May 15th to the 17th visit is the first scheduled for those institutions, but they will all be having the same kind of.
They've never done this before either, to the best of your knowledge.
Well, they've had substantive change. They've had substantive change visits for other reasons. We had one earlier this year, but not for governance, no.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Not a question, but over the past 2 weeks, Bert, I've learned just how technical and how detailed your work is. Thank you, and thank you to Dr. Sherry Clavier. The work and effort you put into this. In short order. Thanks. This time, we're getting close to the end, folks. At this time, I'll ask Dr. King to present information dealing with the results of the institution's 2016 financial.
Good afternoon. I'm BJ King. I'm a three-time graduate of East Tennessee State University, so it's been a really good educational experience for me. I know some of you are also graduates. I think they put the finance person on towards the end to ensure everyone gets a nice nap in the afternoon, so my apologies. I know that you have heard great presentations by many people today about the financial state of the state and of the universities in the state of Tennessee. I think Dr. Deaton did a wonderful job of explaining the fiscal review for higher education in the state of Tennessee. But I want to ensure you today that East Tennessee is on solid financial ground. And I wanted to just touch real briefly on the financial statements from the last fiscal year, 2016. So we took in fees of $150 million and a state appropriation of $94 million. We had gifts and grants in total of $92 million. And then assorted sales and services of educational and other activities of over $40 million, which includes our medical resident participation funds that we receive from the hospitals. We also have auxiliary services that generate about $20 million worth of funding for the university. So our capital assets on the financial statement are about $293 million. And we have associated debt of $46 million, which gives us net assets of $159 million. And that's really what your fiduciary responsibility is over, is these financial statements, the revenue coming in and the expenditures going out. I did want to touch on one thing, because you were told about the financial support from the state of Tennessee in the last 10 years. And one thing that was never mentioned throughout, except briefly, was there's about 3 years of time where there were little red pieces on your diagram there that came from the Recovery Act funds from the federal government that flowed through the state of Tennessee. And I want to tell you that the university invested those funds wisely. They were put into energy reduction projects of HVAC and window replacements. And so those type of projects have allowed us to decrease expenditures in some areas on campus, which is also why we're coming out well on the expenditure side. So I wanted to give you a little history on that. I also want to talk about the audit process, because what I'm here today to do is really deliver this audit report to you from last year. So we are just obviously one institution of higher education in the state of Tennessee. We prepare our financial statements. State audit, the Division of State Audit from the Comptroller's Office of the state of Tennessee, comes to our campus and stays with us about 7 months of the year to do the audit. Some people who are in small or medium-sized business, a 7-month audit might seem horrendous, and it is a lengthy time to have the auditor camped out with you, but we go through it every year. And a large piece of that is that we have compliance audit, not just a financial audit. So we have to comply with federal laws and regulations, and we have to comply with the specifications of these $94 million of grant revenue that I told you that we have. So we have to be in compliance. So the auditors come and do their audit work and generally complete that around November. And about this time of year in March is when we usually have our audit report released in its final published form. They released it early this year so that we could get the report together for our SACS compliance review. So they did release it in January this year. Our audit report is compiled with all the other institutions of higher education in the state of Tennessee, and it actually gets presented as a component unit in the state's audit report. They produce a comprehensive annual financial report on an annual basis as well. And their report is public information, is available on the Comptroller's website as well. So we go through our process, and what our hope at the end of it is to come out with no findings. That's the number one thing we want. And an unmodified opinion. And then we usually go through an exit conference every year with the auditors, and they'll have a short laundry list of little things that they want to kind of talk to you about. Little things that they thought that weren't worthy of a finding, but they just want to let you know some things that you could do to make improvements. And we always appreciate that feedback. It does help us make improvements. So in your, I think I'm on tab 11, and in there you'll have a list of the last 10 fiscal years, our opinion, our audit findings, and then the items discussed. So at ETSU, we have had no findings for the past 4 years. And this year was rather phenomenal because we also had no items to discuss at the exit conference. And I tell you, it's a wonderful day when your auditor can't tell the president something you need to fix. So we were very thrilled with that outcome. I'm not going to go into any more details on the financial statements today. You all can call me or email me if you have any specific questions. I'll be happy to answer them. And I want to tell you just a little bit about the budget as sort of a segue for Dr. Nolan, because he's going to talk about it in more depth. But this also gets to your fiduciary responsibility, so that's why I wanted to point it out today. But at the university, we have what we call our education and general budget. And in that, on the main campus, I think Russ spoke about this briefly this morning. We actually have 4 different units here, 3 that receive a state appropriation and 1 that's privately funded. So we have the main campus, we have the College of Medicine, we have family practice, and we have the College of Pharmacy. So all 4 units have to come up with an education and general budget. And so the budget for the main campus runs around $200 million a year. For the College of Medicine, it's about $53 million. For family practice, $16 million. And for the College of Pharmacy, $11 million. So that's kind of the broad sweeping scope of what your fiduciary responsibility would be overseen as far as activity at the university. And I will answer any questions if you have them today about the audit process or the audit report itself.
Sure, if I could just make one small comment. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I just want to make one comment to frame the report that Dr. King presented. It is rare to have an institution that moves through the audit process without a finding. It is almost unheard of to have an institution move through the audit process without a point of discussion. And I want to thank Dr. King, I want to thank Dr. Collins and the entire staff in your division for the work that you've done. Our ability to hand over at a point of transition to this board from the Board of Regents an audit that is, for all intents and purposes, spotless, is a great place to find ourselves, and let's hope we're back in this position next year. But I just wanted to thank Dr. King, Dr. Collins, and their staff for all the work that went into this.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nolan.
Great job. President's report, Mr. President.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I know it's been a long
Last
day.
item before we adjourn.
I know you all are tired, so I'm going to do my best to try to keep this brief. I want to walk through just 3 topics: budget update, construction update, legislative update. But I want to frame this once again within the lens of mission and planning. We were intentional in our efforts today to spend a lot of time around 125, around policy themes and challenges in the landscape, and then to talk about our strategic plan for the institution. That strategic plan is a living, breathing document. Those goals have the ability to change. We need to be in a position in which we're bringing before you on a regular basis updates on efforts we're making to implement the plan. But I hope that you'll see that this is a plan that is linked to not only initiatives, but it's a plan that links to budget. Because if you're not funding your plan, there's no reason to have a plan. And if you do not have a budget that's aligned to strategic initiatives, there's really not much of a reason to have a budget. So as we begin to prepare the budget to work through the Finance Committee to ultimately come to the board in June, we're building that budget that's heavy on process. Process work is critical for us. If we do not have a deliberative, open, transparent process, then the material that we're going to present to you in June most likely is going to have a flaw. Just like at Eastman, if the process that produces Triton isn't deliberative, Triton's going to have a flaw, and that's going to reduce your share in the market. So the budget that we're moving before the campus this spring that will come to you is focused on these principles. We want to drive faculty and staff salaries. If there are new resources available, we want to make those investments in faculty and staff salaries. We want to ensure that this concept of student success undergirds everything we do. But what's in the slides in front of you are those principles that undergird the budget conversations that are occurring on campus. We have a process in place this spring that is very deliberative. The most important thing to know about the process is it aligns the budget with the strategic plan. It's multi-year in its perspective, and it's inclusive. To say that it's inclusive is an understatement. This is probably the most deliberative budget process we've had in a long time. When Dr. Hoff referenced the amount of meetings that have been opened or live streamed, we've had open budget hearings with each vice president. We have a committee, the Budget Advisory Committee, that's meeting now. They will then present the budget to the VPs. We'll present the budget to another university governance committee. All of this will be vetted in detail and then presented to the Finance Committee. From there, that's an additional opportunity to vet that budget before it finally appears before the board in June. The reason for that review is to ensure that, one, we're wise stewards of the public resources, two, we're wise stewards of the investments that students are making in the institution, but three, we ensure that if there are new revenues available, that we invest those revenue in our people, because it's the faculty and staff that call this institution home that are going to allow us to hit our enrollment goals and our student success goals. So that's the process that's underway presently. It will continue through the spring, and it will culminate in June when we present you with our budget. So, yes, ma'am.
Nothing about that. Because I came in to be out of the country because this is an important day. I have a hard stop at 3:30, so I don't want to be rude.
Make it quick.
But I didn't want to.
Yes, ma'am.
If I slip out, I don't want you to think it's because I don't want to hear this part, because I do. I just need to.
If I haven't completed my slides in 5 minutes, you can throw Dr. Alsop's water bottle at me.
I just don't want to be rude if that happens.
Construction update, and this is an update because there will be some things that occur between now and the next board meeting that will be milestones. First is Martin Center. Between now and the next meeting, there will be some final aspects that occur at the state level. The State Building Commission will give final authorization and approval to this project. So before we see you again, this thing is going to be off and running, and we're getting ready to break ground. So I just wanted to make you aware that that is going to occur between now and June, and that is a rough design of the building in its current form. $52 million facility, of which we as an institution raised through private funds or partnerships with Johnson City, $21 million. And I can assure you, it is not easy to raise $21 million for a building in East Tennessee. It's not easy to raise $21 million for a building anywhere in the state. But that's the public-private partnership that references back to 125 that we've been preparing for. Next is football stadium. Between now and when we meet again, hopefully we're laying turf. But the stadium will be open on time this fall. We open on September the 3rd. Next is the D.P. Culp University Center. That's the building we're in presently. This building opened at its time as a state-of-the-art facility. Someone had a crazy dream of what a building should look like, and we lived with it ever since. I can't tell you this is the final design element, but what you see is a significant addition to the building and a major enhancement of the university's living room. The cafeteria that you ate in today feeds the entire campus. If we reach the goal of 3,500 students living on campus, that cafeteria isn't big enough to feed 3,500 people. Now, over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to have conversations with you about how we sequence this. If any of you have ever tried to renovate your kitchen while you live in your house, you know that this isn't an easy undertaking. Imagine renovating this entire building where you've got to find a way to feed everyone who calls this institution home. So we will approach you about our interest in the Millennium Center and the opportunity for the Millennium Center to help serve as a conduit during this renovation period, because that entire cafeteria is going to come offline in the next 18 months, and we've got to have somewhere to feed everyone. So once again, this is just an advanced glimpse of things that we're going to talk about as a board. Next is the Center for Interprofessional Health, Building 60 on the Quillen campus. This project is underway, and by the time we meet again in June, I hope to have a better picture of progress, because if you were to walk in it now, it is being renovated from top to bottom. Campus Data Center will open between now and the next meeting, and we'll begin the process of moving all of the IT infrastructure of the university from out of its current location in Lucille Clement to this state-of-the-art facility. And then finally is Lamb Hall. Lamb Hall, as the governor referenced, this is a good budget for capital in the state of Tennessee in 2017. We're the #2 project on the state's list, total of $21.8 million renovation and addition. So by the time we meet again, this project would have been funded in the governor's budget. The legislative session would have come to a close, and we'll be talking with you about the process of putting a committee together to help raise our portion of the match. Which takes me to my last slide. I hadn't been hit by the water bottle yet. So on the last slide, I want to draw your attention to two things quickly. The Lamb Hall matching requirement. We're required to raise 25% of the total cost of construction for the facility. At the close of the legislative session, the University of Tennessee at Martin inserted language that reduced their match to 10%. If we could reduce our match to 10%, that's a savings to the institution in excess of $2 million. So one of our legislative items for this year is to equalize the match. Martin's match was reduced because it is in a rural area of the state. This is a rural area of the state. So I'm supportive of the match, but I think this here should be a level playing field. And if one institution has to raise 10%, we should have to raise 10%, particularly given the fact that we just raised $21.5 million for the arts, and we will have raised more than $5 million for football when it's all said and done. We've squeezed the turnip, and there's not a lot left. So that is a critical legislative initiative for us. The next one is opioid research funding. Earlier this week, the Speaker and a number of members from the House held a task force meeting on our campus in which we addressed the opioid challenge facing East Tennessee. Under Dr. Rob Pack and his team, we have developed a center of excellence, and what we would like to receive is some seed money to help jumpstart the activity from a research perspective within that center, a center developed in partnership with Mountain States. The final one that I would draw your attention to is out-of-state tuition and DACA students. There's a piece of legislation right now that's moving through the General Assembly that would provide latitude to our Board of Trustees to determine who's eligible for in-state tuition. This is important for students who fall into the DACA classification, students who have lived in the state of Tennessee for 16, 17 years, but because of their status pay full out-of-state tuition and fees. So if this legislation passed, it would provide our board with the ability to determine how we want to structure tuition. This is not saying the state will grant unilateral authority to X or Y, but it vests that tuition setting authority in the board, where I think it's appropriate for our board to have conversations around in-state and out-of-state tuition based upon the unique demographic and geographic needs of the region. So this is a solid budget for higher education. This is a good year for us financially, but I'm hopeful that it can be an outstanding year if we're able to address the matching requirement for Lamb Hall, receive some seed investment funding for the clinic opportunities that we have with Mountain States, and then we continue the transition work on focus. Mr. Chair, members of the board, before I bring my comments to a 100% close, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve this board, our staff in this region. I want to thank you for your patience. I realize the past 3-4 months has been a little awkward, and today's meeting has had some awkward elements, with myself attempting to chair the meeting at the beginning before handing it over to the appropriate chair, with a lot of organizational things, things that most boards you've served on you've never had to do. I've never served on a board where we had to give birth to ourselves. That's essentially what we did today. So I thank you for your patience with us through this time, and I thank you with your patience with the university in the next couple of months. This is new for all of us. So please send me your comments and feedback on things you'd like to see us do differently. If you'd like us to set up the room differently, let us know. If you'd like to receive your material differently, let me know. If you want my remarks to come to a close now, let me know. But Mr. Chair, members of the board, we are honored to work with you in service to what I feel is the most beautiful mission of any institution in this state. And that's a mission of making a difference in the lives of the people of this region. 80% of the people within 30 miles of where I'm standing who have a college degree received it from this university. There's not a bank or a business or a nursing home or a hospital or a clinic or a factory within 30 miles of here that isn't run by our graduates. You're not going to find that anywhere in the country. We are turning over to you an institution that is in solid shape. We are turning over to you an institution that's focused on its mission, and we are excited to work with you in the months and years to come. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report, and Dr. Alsop, thanks for not throwing the water bottle at me.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I call for adjournment, I just want to add a few comments. You got most of them in your concluding remarks. Thanks to the members from THEC of putting up with us this morning and spending a whole day here with us. It truly was very useful to us, so thank you for that. We look forward to working closely with you in the future. For the presenters, thank you very much for what you're doing for the university. In the next meeting, we have just put in place all the underpinning and the rules and regulations for a real meeting to go forward next time. And we'll want to have presentations along the way by our deans. We'll want to have a very, in many cases, very upbeat and progressive look at where we're going. I said earlier this morning, we're a business. Yeah, we're higher ed, I'm transportation, but we're a business, and a pretty good size one with the budget numbers you've seen today. And yes, we have a product, and we have one on our board right now. And to the extent that we're turning out wonderful, well-educated, not only educated, but well-rounded through the arts programs that are coming on, individuals that can participate in society, have wonderful lives, and graduate here and have good, high-paying jobs within the region is the goal of your board, as well as many other things. So thank you for being here and sharing this long day with us. You stand adjourned.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for sitting by.
Good job. Oh.